This is the second part in a video about a group of cybernetic flying aliens. When last we left off, a peaceful group of islanders known as the Lolas had been enslaved, while the seafaring Keys found themselves on the losing side of a war, thanks to a freak natural disaster. This left the vengeful Turas as the reigning world power, allowing them to flourish while everyone else faced endless oppression. So let's see what happens next. Now unimpeded by their opposition, the Turas could further their technological prowess, first with an industrial revolution, and then, shortly thereafter, the advent of nuclear power. From there, it wasn't long before they could finally reverse engineer their ancient computer brains, allowing them to create more computers and, by extent, more sapiens. This led to a dramatic increase in the planet's sapient population. In the span of just 200 years, they had gone from 100,000 Iron Age peasants to a few billion people living in a fully industrialized world. They eventually made some early form of the internet and wasted no time plugging their computer brains directly into the network. And so, billions of people were bombarded with an endless stream of information, advertisement, malware, and viruses. It got so bad that many people decided they'd rather unplug completely and become wild animals once again. But as they came from a culture of brutal slavers, they knew it was likely they too would be captured and used as beasts of burden if they did. In the end, these aspiring primitivists conspired with the enslaved Lolas and remaining Keys, and with their powers combined, they were able to form a unified front against the Turas and embark upon a great Abolitionist War. A war that led to both a nuclear standoff and a space race, but eventually culminated in the emancipation of all the world's slaves. After 600 years, the Lolas were finally free, and many traveled south to Zemea, the planet's coldest and most isolated continent. This massive sheet of ice and desolate rock was the only remaining land outside of the Turan territory, and it was here the Lolas could cultivate their own nation, free from the systemic oppression that remained in many old world countries. And though the journey was long and the conditions were harsh, they were made all the stronger for it. But they didn't stop there. Using the infrastructure developed in the aforementioned space race, the Lolas terraformed and colonized countless moons and planets in their solar system. And for the most part, Palka expansionism ended here. The vast majority were content with life in the star system, where they had colonized nearly every rocky surface, achieved great technological feats, and even world peace. But one man was far from pleased. His name was Hylean, and he was a Zemean native from a tiny, isolated village, notable only for its tradition of storing sacred memories from ancient lowland slaves, just as their ancestors had kept the memories of their alien gods. For his entire childhood, Hylean was obsessed with these sacred memories and believed history was bound to repeat itself. And so, in a bid to escape this fate, he stole a long-distance spaceship and an industrial-grade replicant, which is basically just a beefed-up 3D printer. Using this ill-gotten spaceship, he escaped to the furthest regions of the galaxy and colonized a barren, rocky planet about the size of Earth's moon. It had no atmosphere, no geothermal activity, and would never be terraformed. He named it Neo-Zemea, and it would quickly become the base for the largest society in the history of the known universe. Through the use of his industrial replicants, Hylean could effortlessly produce sophisticated habitation units, edible crops, and even renewable oxygen. Over the years, he began to print heavy mining machinery, extra replicants, and eventually learned to create exact genetic copies of himself, using biological waste products as a resource. While these Hylean clones were certainly their own individuals, all with unique beliefs and opinions, they still had many of the same basic drives as the original Hylean, such as his explorative nature, for example. And so it wasn't long before many Hylians left their meager homeworld and explored the stars, colonizing more moons and planets than they had any reason to the point that if you explored their particular region of space, you'd find that just about every single planet, moon, and asteroid large enough to stand on had at least a small community of Hylians living on its surface. Obviously, it was only a matter of time before they discovered other intelligent life, and in this case, it was the QoQalls, which they found on a planet-sized military base known as Nevi. The QoQalls were an ancient race that had fallen on hard times. After the loss of their closest and most powerful ally, their galaxy-wide infrastructure was all but destroyed, and countless QoQallen planets were forced to fend for themselves. In an effort just to make ends meet, many QoQalls made a hasty alliance with the Anazades, large, snail-like creatures with a slow, bureaucratic way about them. This proved to be a bad idea when they learned the Anazade officials had been embezzling funds from the QoQallen government. War broke loose, and on Navai, countless Anazaid citizens were captured and imprisoned in expansive internment camps. This was far from a justified crime, but to the QoQal's credit, these citizens had not been tortured or executed in any way, nor were they expected to perform forced labor. But they had been taken without their consent and were not allowed to leave until the war was over. And when the Hyleans hovered over the cities of Navai, they were reminded of what their ancestors had faced in the mines of Kayar, and did not rest until they had killed every QoQal on that planet and set the Anazaids free. This was the start of an extended extermination campaign against the QoQal, which all but destroyed any trace of them across the entire known universe, alongside the start of the Hyleans' role in interplanetary politics. They had allied themselves with the Anazaids and over time became an unspeakably powerful force in the galaxy through the use of their population density alone. They had little pull in the world of writing legislation, but were often the ones enforcing it. You see, as they had healthy populations on literally countless planets and were accustomed to unforgiving conditions, they found a lot of success as soldiers for hire. And this was only helped by the fact that their clientele didn't really see them as individuals. Many even believed they were entirely artificial. After all, they had mechanical brains and reproduced asexually through the use of a machine, no less. One can only imagine what the other Paukas would have thought of their distant cousins if the Hyleans ever came back home to visit. But anyway, that's all I have for you guys today. I imagine the Hyleans would just continue to branch out over time, eventually filling every possible niche in galactic politics, but never really consolidating their power. Like, there'd be more Hylean representatives than any other species, but there would also be more Hylean soldiers and slaves than any other species. But anyway, I'd like to thank my Discord server for all their help on these last few videos. Especially that one kid, whose design for the Anazaids won a server-wide election just as the QoQal had done in the previous video, so I guess my community just has a soft spot for weird alien slug guys. I don't know. But anyway, this video took a lot longer than I had hoped. I wanted to finish it around the 20th of December, and needless to say, that did not happen. Something to do with the holidays and a lack of motivation. What can I say? So with that in mind, it'll probably be a few months before I get back to this series, but in the meantime, you can do other stuff, like submit fan art to my Discord server or the Starscapes Reddit, or even support me on Patreon, where you'd gain early access to all my videos. Links are in the description. But until next time, don't die. See you later.